Hi everyone, this is Todd. Let's go ahead and talk about vacuum tables. Uh, I'm going to make this file available that we're going to be going through here this evening. I'm going to make it available for download. Anyone can grab it. Feel free to edit it and change it in any way that you see fit. So let's talk about the file and vacuum tables. All right, in this file I've created in SketchUp 2016. You should be able to open it in 17 and any other new versions of SketchUp that may come up here later on down the road. Um, so for the vacuum table, I have a nice little list over here, instructions or information on how to, what I used, made out of 3/4 inch pink foam insulation. You can buy that anywhere, Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, um, local hardware store should be able to have it. The base of the vacuum table, I use 1/2 inch plywood. Again, pick that up at the Home Depot, Lowe's, or Menards. I use the 1/2 inch plywood that has one side that's has a nice finish to it, nice flat finish, sanded finish. I use that as the side to meet the bed of my CNC machine, and I glue on the rough side. And the glue that I use Gorilla Glue. With Gorilla Glue, because it's a polyurethane, one of the best tricks I've found for using it. Put a thin layer on the foam, put a thin layer on the wood, and spritz the wood with a little bit of water, and put the foam onto the plywood. When you put the foam onto the plywood, make sure you weigh the top of it, and just keep enough weight on it. And I would let it sit overnight. Should be able to do it. And if you get a little bit of foam coming out around the edges or anything like that, don't worry about it. It's really no big deal. A little bit of the foam that expands out from the Gorilla Glue, if it's around the edges or whatever, it's really no big deal. Um, if you like to have things looking pretty and stuff like that, go ahead and pick it off, or whatever you got to wind up doing. Um, Once you have the foam itself, the block of 3/4 inch foam glued to your plywood base, when these two are joined together, um, I would take it and mount it onto the bed of your CNC machine. The whole idea of this is to make this a removable fixture on your CNC machine. I use my CNC machine for woodworking, so I don't always need to have the vacuum table on the machine itself, on the bed of the CNC. Once you have that mounted onto your CNC bed, um, it's time to start making the recess for the spoiler board and for your workpiece. I'm just going to show obviously I'm just going to show the spoiler board that's here. If you turn on layers, you can, as you go through it yourself, look at the file, turn on layers, you can turn the spoiler board off. Oh, that's my active layer. All right, there we go. So we'll turn the spoiler board off, and you can see the grid pattern that's carved into the foam, milled into the foam. I have dimensions that are here. They give you your depth, so when you go ahead and generate your CAM, or generate your code with the CAM software, you can get a good idea as to what depths I used. The depth for the first cut that you're going to do is 1/4 inch. Dollar Tree foam board's about 3/16 of an inch thick. I do it 1/4 inch because it leaves a little lip um, on the foam itself. A little. that being a little high like that does, I find it to be really good if your vacuum isn't working well, or if it's not what it's supposed to be. It's enough to hold the foam, your workpiece, the foam into place, and it prevents the your work from sliding around as it's cutting. And my vacuum I use an old Dirt Devil vacuum I bought at a garage sale. It works absolutely perfect. I have plenty of vacuum force to be able to hold everything down, um, but that little lip does seem to help out. I do like having it there. It was easy to put in, and it always ensures you're going to cut a good piece, right? So I made that recess, as you can see, 1/4 inch. I made. For the spoiler board. So let's turn the spoiler board back off and look at our grid pattern. The grid pattern itself isn't really. I'm not. Some people always ask me, what made you land on that grid pattern? Is there something to it? No, there's nothing to it. It was just a grid pattern that I created. I wanted even vacuum over my whole workpiece. Um, and that's just the pattern I came up with. And it works pretty darn well. I'm pretty happy with it. So for the grid pattern, I have and I call it the vac ditch path right here. This is the actual path that you will cut. I have these lines are all set on the center of the ditches when they cut. So when you use after you're done doing the pocket, the 1/4 inch pocket to recess in your spoiler, you're going to come at this and you're going to do engrave with your 1/4 inch end mill, and you're going to cut on the center of these lines. This is the way you're going to wind up programming it at a depth of a 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch cutting depth there. Here, let me see if I can, so you can see how that goes. So you have your recess here, 1/4 inch, and then 1/2 inch. Now this is 1/2 inch from the top for your ditches. From the top of the foam to the bottom of your ditches is going to be 1/2 inch. So another 1/4 inch, right? That is plenty of area there to give you vacuum evenly over your whole table. After you do that, next thing you're going to do is you're going to make 4 slots here for your fittings. Now the fittings that I used, I got them right at Home Depot. They were like 69 cents or something like that. They are garden hose fittings. They would be barbed on each end, and of course you can use it to join 2 pieces of hose together. After I made the recesses in the foam, I just use 5-minute epoxy to go ahead and hold that in. If you notice, when we do the spoiler board, let's click that in real quick, and we'll talk more about the spoiler board here in a minute, but let's go ahead and bring the spoiler board back in. And let's get rid of our dims, our dimensions. So as you can see, these fittings actually are at this size, they come through the top of the spoiler board itself. What I did with mine, with my fittings there, I actually took a Dremel tool and I just ground down the fitting to basically match this surface. So I made like a little notch in the fitting itself. I did that. It worked out pretty well. I haven't had any issues or loss of vacuum because of it. Nothing noticeable anyway. And it seems to work pretty good. If you want to, after you go ahead and you grind that out, you can take a piece of tape, lay it over on top of that, and it will, basically seal it off if you find yourself having vacuum problems. But I just filled this with 5-minute epoxy, put it in there and kind of smeared it around with a popsicle stick until it, started to set up and is going to sit in place. So it stays in actually surprisingly well. It does a pretty good job. So once you have those cut, those little recesses cut, go ahead and glue those fittings in. I have what I have here included in the drawing for everyone too, is a manifold. Now I've seen people make the manifold out of PVC pipe, which works pretty good. Um, it's actually quite good. I made this one out of 3/4 inch foam, and you can make it out of 3/4 inch plywood. I have another one that I made out of 3/4 inch plywood that actually works surprisingly well. In this particular, it's just made of a series of squares. In this series of squares, obviously we cut a circle, cut the circle pattern all the way through all these squares right here. This is good as a nice little vacuum chamber or an area to be able to hold even out vacuum between all 4 ports. On the end piece here, obviously, is just a regular square piece of 3/4 inch ply. On this end here, this square right here, this particular piece, this is where your vacuum hose will go into. So you can take this size and you can change this size to whatever the end of your vacuum hose is, just to be able to adapt the vacuum hose into this manifold to get vacuum to the table itself. So for the hose that I use to get the vacuum from here, again, this let me talk about this real quick. The fittings itself here on the manifold. Once you get this manifold made, pop 4 holes in, 5-minute epoxy again, and stick the fittings, the end of the fitting into the manifold itself. Let it sit until it cures, and you're good to go. 5-minute epoxy, about 5 minutes, you're pretty much good to go. Hose that I use to get the vacuum from the manifold to the table itself, I used a clear tubing that's about the same size, or is the same size as a garden hose. So slips over the fitting, so you can go, 1, 2, 3, and 4 to each one of the fittings, and you're all good to go. Now, doesn't have to be anything specific for length between these two. Whatever you have your machine set up for, whatever is comfortable for you to get the hose from there to there, from each one of the fittings to each one of the fittings on the table itself. I used probably 2.5 feet, maybe 2 feet of hose. That seems to flex quite nicely to come into each fitting. Once you have that made, it's time to go ahead and start making your spoiler board. That brings me to this little drawing right here. This right here is the spoiler hole pattern that you're going to use. You're going to use a drill operation for this. I use 1/4 inch holes. They work perfectly. I just use my 1/4 inch end mill. Set up on the 0 spot. I left the center marks there for each one of the holes. So you can just go ahead and set up your center points. Go ahead and set up a drill operation. Peel the paper off of your Dollar Tree foam board to make your spoiler. Set your spoiler down on the vacuum table here with the if you already have the ditches in and everything, and it's already all rigged up to vacuum, go ahead and place your spoiler board on here and start drilling your holes. As you can see from the spoiler board layer, or the spoiler layer that I have here, which I can turn it on and off, this is what you should end up with. You should end up with holes over each intersection of your vac table. So this is how everything should be laid out in a nice little grid pattern here. It gives plenty of vacuum to your workpiece, to your Dollar Tree foam board or the FT foam board. Help hold it in place and keep it down, and you'll find that you'll have enough vacuum to keep the piece from sliding around, side to side or up and down. Um, but as I said before, the little lip that's there that I have for the to help hold your foam piece in works really good too, just in case you have a problem with vacuum. Uh, so to recap real quick, the drawing itself has layers. Make sure you go ahead and turn on your layers inside your SketchUp, so you can go ahead and turn these things on and off, so you can view things, as you want to. Um, yeah, well, that's about it. It's very simple. It's very easy. I think it's a great, one of your first projects for your CNC machine if you're new to having a hobby CNC machine. It's a great first project to do. Um, we all want to go ahead and make FT airplanes as easy as possible. It's a lot better than sitting down with a printed drawing and a knife and spending an evening cutting out an airplane. I literally cut out airplanes. A typical 2 or 3 sheet airplane usually takes me about 20 minutes to cut an airplane, if 20 minutes. It's about 15, and you can have yourself a nice kit to be able to throw together. All your foam already all cut and everything. I make combat planes for my club, and yeah, I make kits and give them away to people just to go ahead and get them suckered into our flying hobby. So, this file will be available for you. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Uh, if you found it helpful, please shoot me a like down below. Give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down and just post what you didn't like about the video. And I'll try to do better in the future for everyone. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care. Have fun.